So it's net zero policies, but we can actually put a line through net zero and use the shorthand green. So let's just take out, we don't need to call it net zero. Right, green. So here is what might change. And before I show you this, I do need to warn you, there's a heck of a lot that we've got to get through here. Yeah, bring it, he said. You don't know what you're asking for, sir. You ready? All of this. So we're talking gas boilers and cars and motor vehicle changes. And then the policies affect car sharing. They affect diet and obesity. It's landlords, it's air travel, it's oil boilers, and it's recycling. And let's go through them one at a time. First of all, gas boilers, delaying the gas boiler ban due in 2035. That's the first policy. Secondly, big one, delayed to ban the sale of new petrol and diesel cars, 2030 to 35. Another huge one. They also clearly hate the new recycling rules, which look like giving people 7 wheelie bins with glass and plastics and paper. And they want to get rid of all that. So that would go as well. Oil boilers, separate area, ban on new ones delayed, 2026 to 2035. So 10-year delay, basically, on that. Diet and obesity, they're basically not taking an interest in. They're not going to be telling people what to eat and how to get thinner. They're not interested in that anymore. Then we're told as well that the famous, there's Peter and Sean from the TV series car sharing schemes, forget them, right? Two more for you. Landlords, we're going to have special rules to make their properties energy efficient. They would go, so it'd be less annoying for landlords. And then air travel, they were going to have new taxes to discourage it. Up goes the plane and away goes the policy. No new taxes to discourage people from flying. So it's a lot. It's a lot. And cars is a really big part of that. Cars and boilers, if you want to sum it all down. I tell you what, let's have a look at the front pages. So the Mail loves it. Finally, common sense on net zero. The Guardian, the opposite. By the way, this is the general election right here, right? Mail Guardian, Tory dismay, PM seeks to soften net zero pledges. The Times has a bit more of a factual take. Sunak set for retreat on climate promises. So we've got here the full, I guess, Shola, you might call it culture wars, this. Is that what it is?
I think this is just more political gambit by the Tory party. Let's be clear that even the title, Is Sunak Wrong to Roll Back, is, I think that it's misleading because we've already had this conversation about the rights and wrongs of, climate change and the climate action that needs to be taken. He knows what's right. He knows what's wrong. This is all about him having political advantage over Labour Party. This is not in the best interest of the country. It's not about our long-term interests like they try to put out. Our long-term interest is clean air. Our long-term interest is reducing greenhouse gas emissions and taking it. So pushing it further is simply their own tactic.
I'm wondering what your friend over here will say, actually.
Well, look, I thought 2030 was overambitious, but he set that date. And I agree with Shona. This is just a cynical ploy after the Uxbridge by-election to get re-elected, because he's realised, actually, the country, although they know and they say they want it, they need it, and we do, they're happy to vote against it because actually it's going to cost them money to implement it, changing your car.
So you'd want him ideally to stick with it?
So in my view, for him to have any credibility, for car manufacturers, they've invested billions and billions of pounds that, manufacturers already, like Volvo, were not producing any more internal combustion engine cars. So many manufacturers have said 2026, that's it. The whole car industry, which has to plan ahead, is invested so heavily. You can't suddenly say, last night, I tell you what, I've had a slight change of heart, particularly as he's maintained steadfastly, this is what's going to happen.
OK, so it's very interesting to hear you both sort of almost in sync on this. Let's talk to radio host Mike Parry. Mike, I know you'll be jumping up and down with joy today because you've been attacking particularly the car policy for a long time.
Well, I'm not jumping up and down with joy, but I'm celebrating the introduction of common sense. Now, my great colleague there, Dr. Shola, started her opinion on it by saying it's political. You see, I don't think it is political. I think for the first time in about 15 years, a politician, that's Rishi Sunak, has sat down and said, now, hang on, let's look at the common sense approach. What do we hope to gain by bringing in these green policies, which will cost everybody a lot of money, which will slow down the country, which will burden us with big debts, which will threaten our security of energy in this country? Why are we doing all
Shola
this?
wants to
And the
come in.
answer is
Shola.
because it's political dogma.
Shola wants to come
it's
in.
political dogma. The Green lobby have suddenly said green is good. Even the former Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, I was going to say Boris Becker then, Boris Johnson stood up at an international conference and said green is good, but green is only good if it benefits everybody.
Shola,
This doesn't benefit everybody.
let Shola come in.
Let
She's
me
very
remind
politely
everybody,
waving. Wait.
Only 1% of emissions in the world come from this country.
Go on.
Thank you, if I may please speak. So my esteemed colleague, Mike, has referred to this as a common sense approach, which is utter, with all due respect, of course, nonsense. Are we to believe that Rishi Sunak, who is meant to be an intelligent, educated man, did not review all of these commitments before he made a pledge and he made a commitment? So we do know that it's about political advantage right now, and that this is purely for the Tories to be able to get back into power come general elections. And look, this whole thing about getting clean air and addressing climate action is not just about policies of what the car industry would do or what we should do about at home. It's also about a change of lifestyle.
Right.
This is how we've lived for a long time,
Okay.
and it's not
But Mike,
helping
the
us
other thing is,
or the earth.
if we leave net zero for another 10 years, we've just got to do more of it in 10 years' time.
No, I don't agree. The eventual target is 2050, okay? How do we not know that by 2050, somebody will have invented a way to turn water into energy? We don't know that because it's a long time away. So what we are doing is we're going down this dark tunnel of saying, with this huge ideological belief, green is good, green isn't good. The cost of living crisis is the main thing that the Prime Minister has to worry about. And he's done a wonderful job in giving people hope that green taxes and all the cost of going green will be taken away from them before 2030. It's a marvellous move.
Mike, didn't Rishi Sunak sit down with his advisors when he took over premiership, bearing in mind this was the biggest thing that he had to deal with, and work out whether or not 2030 was actually a realistic date in the country's interests, in the climate's interests, etc., etc.? Did he not, before he announced any of these provisions, decide that, yes, this is where we had to go? And has he not repeated all along, this is the date that's going to be met? What's caused this change of mind? How is it such a coincidence that it's after the Uxbridge by-election?
Quickly, Mike, and I'll bring in a caller.
Because we now know it's a very unpopular policy, because I put my faith in the British people for their common sense ahead of politicians. And the British people know it's a dogmatic political contract.
There we are. So he needs to, let's be clear, there is politics here. He needs to win the next general election. He's, we could probably all agree on this. And he's worked out that people will not vote in large numbers for green policies. He thinks he may be making a terrible mistake.
Because he knows they're mad.
Well, I'm not saying that. Keith in Wiltshire, what would you like to say?
Well, I just think this is absolutely disgraceful, personally. What price do you put on the planet Earth? We've had global warming that's been going on for years. The ice caps are melting, adverse weather. And to hear Mike Parry go on like he just has, he's a very, very ignorant person. I drive a petrol vehicle. Okay, that's my choice. If people want to drive electric vehicles, let them.
Well, hang on. If Mike's, why are you driving a petrol vehicle and calling Mike Parry ignorant?
Well, that's only because I've not had a chance to get an electric one yet. I just don't have the funds to do that.
All right. Apologies if that was unfair. Okay.
I just don't think that Mike Parry saying these green issues will cost us a lot of money. All right, he may be right. But the internal combustion engine has been obsolete for years. Honda brought out, not so long ago, a hydrogen engine. The only waste with that is water.
All right, Keith, thank you. I think we'll take a break and we'll then what do you want to say, Mike, in 5 seconds?
All I was going to say is electric cars are as bad for the environment as petrol and diesel-driven cars because the manufacturing of them is a disgrace.
OK, that is contested, of course. After the break, we'll take more of your calls.